They say love thy neighbor, but they forgot to teach us what to do when that neighbor is a strategic parasite. Most people scream, "Me, I calculate," and today, it is time to settle the bill. Welcome to Lutaman Stories, where intelligence is always respected and every scheme gets dismantled by IQ. Imagine being woken up at 5:30 on a Tuesday morning, not by the gentle chime of your alarm, but by the frantic vibration of a stranger's rage through your phone. I stared at the screen glowing brightly in my dark bedroom, an unknown number. I declined it. It rang again and again. When I finally answered, a harsh male voice erupted. He accused me of blocking his driveway for the third time this week. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I simply stepped out onto my balcony, holding a cup of black coffee and looking down. There it was, a beat-up white sedan parked diagonally across two spots, paralyzing the morning commute of 3 other residents. And right there, prominently displayed on the inside of the windshield, was a lime yellow card. My name, my phone number, printed in bold black ink. This was not a mistake. It was a calculated move by Mr. Sterling from Unit 1401. You see, Sterling is the kind of person who treats the world like his personal trash can. He is the type who thinks rules are just suggestions for people less clever than him. By using my number, he enjoyed the convenience of illegal parking while I inherited the headaches from his victims. I stood from above watching the angry man kick Sterling's tire. 10 minutes later, Sterling finally shuffled out of the building with a face of practiced innocence. He bowed. He apologized. He blamed his clumsy hands and his poor eyesight. When I confronted him later in the hallway, he did not even flinch. He flashed a smile stained with nicotine and said, "Oh, Arthur, I am sorry, truly sorry. My 3-year-old grandson must have been playing with those cards and swapped the numbers." You know how kids are. They are just little bundles of chaos. I leaned in, my voice dropping to an icy whisper. "Mr. Sterling, in my profession, a 1-digit deviation is an accident. A 10-digit deviation, repeated 3 times, is a declaration of war. Your grandson is not an agent of chaos. He is just your excuse. But here is the thing about excuses. They only work if the listener is stupider than the liar. Do not make the mistake of thinking we are on the same level." I left him standing there with his smile frozen. He thought he had won because I did not shout. He did not realize that in my head, the countdown to his social and financial bankruptcy had already begun. 2 a.m. When darkness prevails and silence becomes a luxury, my phone screams once again with a rude interruption. I open my eyes. There is no lingering sleepiness, because I know Mr. Sterling has just made his next move in this chess game. On the other end of the line is a woman sobbing. She says a white car is parked right in front of the emergency exit and the ambulance ramp. Her son is having a high fever and seizures, and that car is making it impossible for any ambulance to reach the lobby. I put on my coat. I walk down to the apartment courtyard in the freezing May night wind. The scene looks like a chaotic play. Sterling's car is parked boldly right in the middle of the yellow lines reserved for emergency vehicles. On the glass is still that card bearing my phone number. The young mother is sobbing. While her husband is frantically banging on the car window, I walk up. My voice maintains its usual calm. I briefly explain that I am not the owner. I am a victim of identity theft. I help them contact a rideshare driver at the outer gate and guide them to take the baby there as quickly as possible. After the taxi rolls away, I stand alone in the courtyard, staring at Sterling's white car. I do not call a tow truck. I do not key the car, because those actions are too instinctive and leave footprints. I go straight to the 14th floor. I knock on Sterling's door. My knocks are steady and steel hard. It takes a long time. The door finally creaks open. Sterling appears in disheveled pajamas. He tries to start his act of rubbing his eyes and yawning. I cut him off immediately. I ask, "Mr. Sterling, do you realize that just to save a few dollars in overnight parking fees, you almost became a murderer?" Sterling freezes for a second. Then he lets out a laugh, a smirk full of shamelessness. He says, "Oh, Arthur, you are overthinking again. It was just a temporary spot. Children getting sick is normal. There is no need to make such a big deal out of it. He then adds a sentence that would shatter anyone's patience. He says, "Since you are already down there anyway, just grab the spare key from the security guard and move the car for me. I am too tired to go down." I look deep into his eyes. I can see the smugness of a man who believes he can always exploit the kindness of others. I say, "Mr. Sterling, you have just confirmed to me that your selfishness is limitless. You did not just steal my identity, you are challenging the limits of the law of karma." I turn and walk away, leaving Sterling muttering about how the youth today are so difficult. I do not go back to bed. I sit at my desk. I open my computer and begin to access the resident forum. I know, to defeat a thick-skinned person, the best way is to strip away their fake kindness in front of the crowd. This game, I will not just win. I will make Sterling pay with everything he is trying to protect. The next morning, the messages in the resident group exploded. Mr. Sterling had started a new performance. He sent a photo taken from his balcony looking down at the parking lot. It was accompanied by a status update filled with victimhood. He said that because he had to travel urgently to visit a relative, he did not have time to move his car. He tagged my name and wrote, "Arthur, my dear neighbor, I have left the key with the security guard. Please be kind enough to go down and move it for me. Neighbors helping each other in times of trouble is the right thing to do." This was a moral kidnapping in front of the crowd. If I refused, I would become the narrow-minded person in the eyes of those who did not know the truth. If I agreed, I would officially become his unpaid servant. I leaned back in my chair, looked at my phone screen and smiled. I did not reply to the group. I was waiting. Sure enough, only 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was a different man. He was blocked by Sterling's car on his way to work and was extremely furious. He said, "Hey you, did you see what Mr. Sterling posted in the group? You have the key, so go down and move the car now. I am about to be late for a meeting." I took a deep breath. It was time to use the strategy of borrowing a blade to eliminate the wicked. I answered in a completely different tone, a tone that was arrogant, superior, and full of defiance. "Exactly like the way Sterling had treated me the night before," I said. "I like parking there. So what? I am busy traveling now. If you like, just stand there and wait, or you can try to touch my car and see. I will sue you until you are bankrupt." The other end went silent for a second in shock. Then came a barrage of frantic swearing. The man screamed that he had never seen anyone as despicable as me. I simply hung up the phone. I knew this man. He was a young man known for his hot temper in the neighborhood, the owner of an expensive Porsche frequently parked in the next building. And more importantly, I knew he was preparing to fly to England to settle down this very morning. A person with nothing left to lose here and in a state of rage. That was the most perfect tool to execute justice. I stepped out onto the balcony, once again sipping my coffee. I saw the man rush down to the courtyard. He did not call security. He did not call the police. He pulled a baseball bat out of the trunk of his car. The sound of metal crashing against glass echoed sharply through the quiet space. 1 hit, 2 hits. Sterling's white car quickly became deformed, but I did not stop there. I picked up my phone, sent a message to the resident group for everyone to witness. I wrote, "Mr. Sterling, someone is smashing your car. I told you not to park illegally, but you did not listen. Now I do not know what to do either. In the profession of behavioral analysis, there is a rule called triggering. I had just provided Sterling with a sugar-coated poison. He was far away, unable to do anything but watch his property be destroyed through a phone screen. That helplessness was just the appetizer for the revenge feast I had prepared. The game was going exactly as planned. Sterling thought he could use the crowd to coerce me, but he forgot that. The crowd is a double-edged sword, and I am the one holding the handle. The following morning, Sterling rushed back from his vacation spot in a panic. The usually quiet neighborhood became noisier than ever. When he saw his white car, it was no longer a vehicle. It was a mangled hunk of metal. The windshield was shattered. The body was shredded with deep gouges. And most bitterly, the words "illegal parking" were carved into the hood with a sharp object. Sterling screamed frantically in the middle of the courtyard. He did not look for the man with the baseball bat. Instead, he charged straight toward the building lobby when he saw me casually walking out to my car for work. He pointed a finger at my face, his voice trembling with rage. He screamed, "Arthur, you bastard! You did this. Did you not? You hated me because of the phone number card, so you smashed my car. You must pay me $50,000, not a penny less." A crowd of neighbors began to gather. Curious eyes and whispers filled the air. Sterling started his specialty performance. He sat on the ground, wailing about being an elderly man bullied by a youth. He claimed I was a schizophrenic, someone who spoke kindly at night but acted like a thug in the morning. I stood still. I did not take a single step back. I took out my phone and pressed the speakerphone for everyone to hear. It was the recording of the call from 2 in the morning. Sterling's voice rang out clearly. "Just move the car for me since you are down there. I am too tired to go down." After that, I handed the police officer who had just arrived at the scene a memory card. I said, "Officer, this is the data from the security camera inside my apartment. It recorded my entire activity from last night until this morning. I did not leave my home until now. Furthermore, the dash cams of the surrounding cars have surely captured the real culprit." The officer checked his tablet and looked at Sterling with a weary gaze. He said, "Mr. Sterling, we have identified the culprit through the neighborhood surveillance cameras. It was a young man driving a black Porsche. He smashed your car because you blocked his path to the airport. However, there is a small problem. This person has already cleared customs and is currently abroad. His family says you are free to sue, but he will not be returning for several years." Sterling's face turned pale. He stammered, "What about the money for my car repairs? Who will pay me?" The officer shrugged. "You can file a civil lawsuit, but it will take a lot of time and money. However, right now, we must issue you a $500 fine for illegally occupying an ambulance access path. Each matter is handled separately." I smiled as I watched Sterling stand frozen amidst the mockery of the neighbors. I walked closer and whispered into his ear, "Mr. Sterling, this is called opportunity cost. You wanted to save $10 on parking, but you lost $50,000 in repairs and a fine. You see, my logic is always more accurate than your excuses." Sterling looked at me with eyes full of hatred. He gritted his teeth and said, "Arthur, you are good. Just you wait. I will not let you be." I simply adjusted my collar, stepped into my car, and started the engine. This game has just begun, and Sterling has just paid the tuition for his first lesson. After his disastrous defeat in the parking lot, Sterling no longer dared to park illegally, but a man like him never accepts loss. He began to switch to a new form of attack, meaner and dirtier. A few days later, every time I returned from work and stepped out of the elevator, a foul stench rose right in front of my door. Initially, I thought it was a trash leak, but upon closer inspection, I saw dark fluid streaks clinging to the walls and seeping into the tile grout. It was sewage mixed with fermented food scraps. Sterling was clever. He did not pour a whole bucket. He used a brush to stealthily apply thin layers onto the wall in the early morning after I had left for work. When I returned in the evening, the dirty water had dried, leaving no trace except for a disgusting scent that made the air inside my home suffocating. I did not show any anger in the resident group, nor did I go and bang on his door, because I knew Sterling was standing behind door 1401 listening for my despair. Instead, I ordered the latest generation of a smart eye camera with 4K resolution. I installed it right on the peephole of my front door. At the same time, I accessed a specialized website to order a bottle of a solution containing the world's smelliest organic compound. It is an industrial chemical used to detect gas leaks. Just a tiny drop is enough to make a massive room uninhabitable for days. Friday morning, I intentionally slammed my door hard and walked away in a hurry to make Sterling believe I had left the house. Sure enough, only 5 minutes later, a notification appeared on my phone. Motion detected at the front door, through the phone screen. I saw Sterling holding a small bucket and a brush. He smiled triumphantly while painting dirty water on my wall. He even stopped to inhale the stench as if it were a piece of art. I muttered. "Mr. Sterling, you like the art of scent, do you not? Let me give you a taste of its peak." That night, when the clock struck 12, I put on medical gloves and a specialized mask. I stepped out quietly into the hallway. I did not splash water or smear dirt on his walls. As I said, I am a man of intellect. I used a small syringe to inject the chemical solution into Sterling's keyhole. Then, I added a few drops to the rubber door seal and the cracks of the wooden shoe cabinet outside his hallway. This compound has a characteristic of being extremely adhesive and cannot be cleaned by ordinary detergents. It will soak deep into wood and rubber, emitting a concentrated stench like decomposing animal carcasses mixed with old dirty socks. The next morning, the entire 14th floor was shaken by Sterling's screams. He opened his door to take out the trash, but immediately had to flee back inside because of the horrific stench emanating from his own door. Even his grandson started crying because he could not bear it. Sterling called security and the police. When I opened my door and stepped out with an innocent face, I saw Sterling pointing at his door and wailing. I simply said casually, "Oh, perhaps the sewage system of this old apartment building is having issues." Like Mr. Sterling said before, in an old building, it is normal for the sewer smell to back up. Sterling looked at me. His eyes were bloodshot with rage, but he could not say a word. He knew exactly who did it, but he had no evidence. As for me, I had the video of him painting dirty water on my wall as insurance. In this odor warfare, Sterling had lost completely on his own home turf. After living for a week in a house haunted by a foul stench without finding any legal cause to accuse me, Sterling seemed to have broken down. One evening, as I stepped out of the elevator, I saw Sterling waiting for me with a completely different expression. Gone was the arrogance and the smirk. In their place were bloodshot eyes and a haggard face. He held a large bag of red apples. Standing next to him was his grandson holding a teddy bear. Sterling bowed his head. His voice choked with emotion as he spoke. "Arthur, I know I was wrong. I have thought a lot over the past few days. I am old and sometimes confused. The parking business and the dirty water were my fault. I brought some apples to apologize and hope you can let it go. Let our two families live in harmony as before." I looked at the bag of apples and then at his remorseful face. If it were an ordinary person, perhaps they would have felt pity. But in the profession of behavioral analysis, I call this the strategy of lowering the defensive barrier. When enemies cannot win with strength, they try to win with misery. I did not accept the bag of apples. I simply said, "Mr. Sterling, I do not hold on to hatred. I only hold on to principles. If you truly want peace, keep the boundaries of our homes clean." Sterling nodded repeatedly, leading his grandson back home. But the nature of a snake never changes just because it has shed its skin. 3 days later, I realized that peace was merely a curtain for a more despicable plot. That afternoon, through the smart eye camera, I saw Sterling's wife, Rose, leading the grandson past my door. She intentionally slowed down, looking around to make sure no one was in the hallway. Then, she whispered into the child's ear. Immediately, the 3-year-old child ran to the mat in front of my door and casually relieved himself right there. Rose not only did not stop him, but she also smiled brightly and patted the child's head. She spoke softly but loud enough for the camera to record. "Leo is so good, we must wash the house of the bad person like this." It did not stop there. The child saw an Amazon package I had just ordered sitting by the door. With his grandmother's encouragement, he used his urine-soaked hands to tear apart the packaging and stomp on the item inside. It was the high-quality toilet paper I had just purchased. I took a deep breath to restrain my disgust. I stepped outside and caught them in the act. Rose immediately changed her expression. She pulled the child behind her and spoke in a shrill voice. "Arthur, why are you looking at the boy so scary? He is just a child." He could not hold it, so he accidentally went on your mat. There is no need to make a scene. Sterling also ran out from his house. He no longer had the remorseful look of a few days ago, he said. "That is right. Kids being naughty is their nature. Besides, Those cheap rolls of toilet paper are not worth much anyway. I will pay you $10 and that will be it. Furthermore, people say a child's urine wards off evil. You are lucky I am not charging you a fee. I looked at the whole family, from the wicked grandmother to the cunning grandfather. They were using the child as a weapon of immunity. I smiled, a smile that made Sterling shiver. I said, "You are right. The child is not at fault. The fault lies in how the adults teach them. I will not accept your $10. Just consider this a gift I am giving to your family's wonderful education." I went inside and closed the door. I knew I did not need to say another word, because I had just decided to send the Sterling family a real educational gift. A gift they would remember for the rest of their lives. Saturday morning, a special package was delivered to my front door. It was a massive box with bright and lavish packaging. Printed on the side was the rescue dog team every child dreams of. I intentionally placed the package in the most visible spot possible, right next to the mat where Sterling's grandson had previously relieved himself. I sat in my living room. I opened the camera app on my tablet and began the countdown. I knew that the greed and the tolerance for bad behavior within the Sterling family would never leave this bait alone. Sure enough, at 2:30 in the afternoon, Sterling's wife Rose led their grandson past my door. The child immediately shrieked when he saw the giant toy. Rose initially pretended to scan the surroundings, but seeing the hallway was empty. She encouraged the boy to grab the entire package and drag it into their home through the screen. I saw her triumphant smirk, the smile of someone who thought they had just stolen a treasure. But inside that box was no toy. It was an industrial dye spray system meticulously designed by me. It contained high-concentration dye powder typically used for marking criminals. This powder had a terrifying characteristic. Upon contact with air and moisture, it would bind tightly to skin and fabric. It could not be washed off for at least 2 weeks. 10 minutes later, a muffled explosion echoed from the Sterling apartment, immediately followed by agonizing screams. I calmly opened my door and stepped out into the hallway. The Sterling door swung open. A classic scene appeared before my eyes. The entire Sterling family, from the elders to the child, were dyed a deep purple from head to toe. Rose looked like a giant purple sweet potato with matted hair. Sterling and his son Jason were no better. Purple patches were smeared across their faces and clothes. Even their entire floor and expensive sofa set had turned a deep shade of violet. Jason rushed out, intending to punch me. He roared that I had set a trap to harm his family. I simply pointed at the camera on my door and spoke in my coldest voice. "Jason, before you swing that fist, remember the camera recorded your mother and your son stealing my package. By law. This is theft of property. If you touch me, that will be assault." Just then, the elevator doors opened. 2 police officers stepped into the hallway. They were all too familiar with this address, but this time, they could not hide their shock at the sight of an entire purple family standing there shouting. I handed my phone to the police. On it was the purchase history for a special effects prop package intended for a company event. I said, "Officer, I bought these items for work." They took it into their home without permission and caused the explosion themselves. Now they are trying to assault me and demanding a large sum of compensation. Jason had completely lost his cool by now. He reached out and shoved a young officer while screaming that everyone was in on a conspiracy. That was his final mistake. Immediately, he was handcuffed and pinned against the wall. Rose slumped onto her purple floor, wailing. Sterling stood frozen in place. The usual smugness and cunning had vanished. I looked at them and said, "Mr. Sterling, you said the child is not at fault, and you are right. The fault lies with the adults who taught the child that they could take what belongs to others without paying a price. Today, this purple color is the educational lesson I am giving to your family, completely free of charge." Things did not stop at the purple stains. In the profession of financial and behavioral analysis, I know how to make one falling pawn take down the entire board. The chain reaction Sterling accidentally triggered was now far beyond his control. A few days after the purple explosion, Jason was detained for assaulting a public official. Rose was processed by the police for theft, but the heaviest blow came from the building management and the other residents. The video of the Sterling family stealing the package and the scene of the child relieving himself at my door spread with lightning speed. Neighbors who had previously been blocked by Sterling's car or harassed by him finally found the courage to speak up. A petition with over 50 signatures was sent to the landlord, demanding the Sterling family leave the complex for serious violations of community rules and disturbing public order. Monday morning, I walked into the lobby and saw Sterling standing next to a mess of luggage. Their apartment was a rental, and the landlord had decided to terminate the lease immediately to avoid further trouble. The purple stains on Sterling's face had not yet faded. It made him look both miserable and ridiculous. He saw me. "No more threats, no more smirks," Sterling asked with a trembling voice. "Arthur, you have won. You have driven this old man away. Are you satisfied now?" I paused. I adjusted the watch on my wrist and looked him straight in the eye. I said, "Mr. Sterling, you are mistaken. I did not drive you away. Your own selfishness and cheap excuses did that. I am merely the reflection of what you have caused. You parked in the wrong spot. You lost your car. You taught a child to steal. You lost your honor. You challenged my patience. You lost your home. This is not about winning or losing. This is the balance of mathematics." I walked past him without looking back once. The taxi carrying the Sterling family slowly rolled away from the building gates. The inherent peace finally returned to the 14th floor. While sitting in my car on the way to the office, I received a message from the mother of the baby who had the fever that night. She wrote that her son had recovered and thanked me for my timely help. I smiled. That was the only reward I truly valued in this entire game. This world is inherently chaotic, and sometimes kindness needs a bit of intellectual edge to protect itself. Never mistake the silence of an intelligent person for weakness, because when we start calculating, the result is always inevitable. Welcome to the conclusion of this story. I am Arthur Vance, and this is Liu Teman Stories, where intelligence is always the ultimate weapon. I have completed the English translation of the final chapter. If you are satisfied with the entire series, please let me know if there is anything else I can assist you with.